You are now listening to the Do It Movement podcast, where we share our experiences in real estate investing and encourage you to take action. You don't want to miss what we have in store today, so let's welcome our host, Martine Richardson, and our co-host, Lori Eubanks.
What's up today, Do It Movement listeners? This is your host, Martine Richardson, your buy and hold coach, and I am joined today with my co-host, Lori Eubanks. How are you doing today, Lori?
Hey girl, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
I am so glad that you decided to be the co-host on this podcast because you are going to bring a ton of value for the listeners. But for people that, you may have been listening to previous seasons, or maybe you're not in this Richmond, Virginia area that we are in, you may not know who Lori is. So today I'd like to introduce Lori to the show, let you guys get to know her a little bit better. So Lori, share with us, how did you get into real estate? Just share your story with the listeners.
Well, thank you, Martine. Yeah, so it has been a whole journey. It's the best way to describe it. It is not easy. It's, something that you just gotta do it, right? Do it movement. You just gotta jump in, because if you think too much about it, you may talk yourself out. You might have your family that talks you out. But, a lot of us get into this business because we have to find a way. And so back in 2012, that's exactly what happened. We went on, just one income. I had 3 young kids and a mortgage, and it was stressful. So, at that point, we looked at what else can we do to make money? And so we did find real estate. We found some local free real estate groups that, people would share their story, how they got started. And from there, I would take people to lunch and ask for their story and, ask, how can I help them? And so I formed some relationships that I still have today. Everyone has just been so giving, and, you just try to add value along the way. So in 2012, I was told, if you don't, and if you're not embarrassed by your offer, it's just not low enough. So I was like, well, it sounds kind of confusing. How do you know it's a good deal? So I decided I'll just call these listings and offer half off. I didn't have a wholesale deal flow yet. And that was just a free and easy way. It was just pull up Zillow, on my lunch break and just make those calls. And I would offer the agent, you can get commission, on my end and from the seller. So you can get double commission. And that was I was hoping that would entice them to work out a deal. So I upset a lot of people, offering half off. Finally, I got someone. It was a probate deal. The heirs were selling the property, and it was an ugly house. But it was on an acre lot, a rancher, and been vacant for some time. So I offered half off. They wanted 60, and I offered 30. And, a couple call, that my offer was ridiculous, and at that point I was okay with that. I was used to that, response. And then the agent said, but they'll do 35. And in that moment when you get that first deal, you're like, oh snap, I'm going to have to do this. I've gotten it. I know it's a good deal because it's half off, So, I came back to the real estate groups and I'm like, I got this deal. Now what? And, they gave guidance on, getting contractor bids. And it took a long time to close because it was a probate deal. But yeah, we got into it full gut, and then found it had fire, mold, termites that went up to the ceiling.
God, all the problems.
Oh my gosh. So, at that point, I was paying for education, learning in the deal. The city shut us down. The county shut us down because I didn't pull permits. And then also the contractor took some money that I gave him down. I gave him a down payment.
My God.
And so it was traumatizing. I was getting my kids, from daycare and taking them, loading them up to go look at this ugly house. It was very emotional, it was just hard to stay positive through that deal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after months of, at least took 9 months to do this whole deal. My friend who's an agent, real estate agent, said, all you have to do is just, if you rent this and then refinance it, you could actually cash flow. And at that point, I was like struggling. Like, how do I pay this utility bill? Like, it was down to it. And so,
Right.
that $500 cash flow paid for my utilities and, some extra as well. So I'm like, well, how many of these do I need to feel like I can leave my job? Then I have 40 hours extra. I could put that towards my family, to growing more. That was a dream at that point. So I started realizing the power of the buy and hold, because I'm able to get cash flow and it's going to go up. That one property, has gone up a lot since we had purchased it in 2012. So that was a big lesson. Then I started doing, cosmetic jobs, because I learned the big flips are very difficult and I never want to do that again. Right. So I'm like, so then I'm just doing cosmetic deals, one deal at a time while I'm running to work. Being a mom and just doing one deal at a time, was flipping one, and then I was able to buy, a rental. So very slow growth until 2015.
Right.
2015, I started buying portfolios. And so I was getting, it was the best thing ever, because I'm like, wow, this is one contract, one day of inspection, one day of purchase. And so I got a seller finance portfolio, and that was a game changer for me. So then I started buying portfolios and doing flips and doing Airbnbs and wrapping money. So I've done a little bit of everything. And today, we have strong deal flow. We work with a lot of wholesalers. They've changed our lives. And I feel like, it's just been a great win-win. And my brother's in it full time. So we're all deal making.
That's awesome.
The last 30 days, I know I've wholesaled Martine like 4 properties.
It's been amazing.
It's been amazing. Yeah, it's just been a great journey, and I'm so grateful. Everyone has poured so much into me, and in 2018 I met Martine, so just an amazing journey.
Right. So this is a side note, but since you brought up the 2018s when we met, so just to put a little sidebar in here, 2018 was an awesome year for me. That was the year I met Lori. That was the year I met my husband. Like, all the game changers in my life, I met them in 2018. So that was just an amazing year. So I want to ask you though, like, okay, so your first deal that you did, it was a hold because you had run into so many struggles and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How can I make this happen? So your first deal was a hold. How did you realize the power of holding from that deal? I'll give you an example of like what I'm asking. I remember when I first got my first rental property, and at this point I was only doing active things. I had no passive income. And I got this first rental property and I kept getting checks for it months later. And I said, wow, you can get checks and not work. So I guess what I'm asking is, how did that first deal, even though it was a struggle, how did it help you realize the power of holding?
Yeah. Well, it hit so many different levels because, I could have listed it and made some money on the flip. I had gone over budget, of course, and over time. So when my friend said, why don't you just refinance it out? I thought about it and I'm like, it's going to go up in value. So there's that long-term tax impact is huge. Mm-hmm. So you make about a third more holding it as a rental, but then, just think an extra 50 grand in a couple of years if it goes up, and that was the area we were in. I felt like is going to change. So then I started thinking about it in terms of like what bills it can cover, because for me, I was up at night thinking about the bills. So, okay, it's taking care of a couple bills, weight lifting, and then I didn't have to wait. You could list something and it would rent up like within a week. You'd have many applications to be in that school district. So I knew the area. And I just think the reason I started looking at it different is because the people around me were so encouraging. There's an abundance of deals out there. So sure, this flip can help, but like you're not going to make as much as you thought because you went over budget. And when you do the refi, I was actually able to pull some money out on the refi. So even though I went over that 70% loan to value, at the bank at that time, you could go and get 85% loan to value. So I'm like, oh, when I refi, I can make a chunk of money and I have something paying these multiple bills. So for me, thinking about tax-free money, you're able to pull money out of the deal. If you buy it right, pull it out, it's tax-free, and then later you're making extra money just for holding. It's just so many benefits. So I think that was just a mindset change.
That's amazing, because like when I hear about people getting into real estate, I never hear anybody say, oh my God, I just grew up loving real estate and all my life I wanted to be an investor. Unless they knew an investor in their family or this was the family business. I don't really hear that story too often. What I usually hear is I was struggling. I needed to find a way to pay my bills. I needed to find more time because I couldn't see my kids. I made a lot of money at my job, but I didn't have any time. So I needed to find a way to free up my time. Or like you said, we went on one income. We still had more than one income of bills. So I needed to figure out a way to be able to pay all of these bills and live comfortably and not stay up at night stressing out about how I'm going to pay all of these things. So in your mind, you thought, well, if I keep this property, what bills can I pay with all this additional income I'm getting? And then you still got the chunk of money. And then, like, as you said, when you're keeping and holding these properties, they go up in value. Yeah. So if you want, later on down the road, you can refinance it again and get a chunk of money. Or you can just let your net worth continue to increase because you bought smart and you held it. So although it seems like it was, at the time, probably a very difficult time, to me, it seems like you made a very smart choice in keeping it, because it's like, wow, I went through all of this. At least I can have something to show for it, Yeah. And so that story is very awesome. It's very inspiring.
Well, thank you. And if I didn't have the right people around me, because I'm like, well, I'm not going to be able to get a bank loan. I don't make that much and I have all these bills. And it was the people around me encouraging me, of course you can get a loan. Like, you have a W-2 job, you can get this leased and that shows as income against the property. It's not a liability, it's an asset because it's making you money. So if I didn't have the encouragement around me, it would have stunted my growth. If I had stayed in that belief that I couldn't get a loan, I would have flipped it and not made as much money. So, being around the right people will help your growth.
So let's talk about being around the right people. Like, it seems to me, I'm not sure, I don't want to make any assumptions, but how did you find these people that were so encouraging, that believed in you, that, were these people already investors, or like, how did you get around this circle?
Yes. So it was, just showing up and really connecting. So it was, the RIA group, the local RIA group, going there and finding the people that were doing it and really understanding what helped them just do it, and then forming those relationships. I didn't have anybody in my, circle at the time that understood that. And once you see that other people can do it and they're successful, why can't you do it? It's because you don't believe that you can. So being around those people that said, of course you can do it. Why can't you? So, when we're little, they say, curiosity kills the cat. And that's such a famous saying. And what's sad is that you should be curious. You should try different things. So we teach our kids that early on when that's the wrong mindset. We need to be thinking out of the box. So it's just, now that I think that way, I think that about everything. And it's changed my life.
Right. That is amazing. I want you guys to not overlook what she just said. She did not have anyone currently in her life that was doing this. So she went to seek the people that were doing that. And by seeking those people, developing relationships with them. And I'm sure this took a lot of courage, a lot of bravery. You're like, I don't know these people. What do I have to offer these people? So you just ask them, how can I add some value to you? Yes. You don't have to overthink this. You don't have to overthink this. Just try to build genuinely strong relationships with people and see how you can help them. Everyone needs help in something, whether we don't have enough time, maybe it's something that we're trying to do, we don't really know how to figure it out. But she came in, she tried to help these people, coming with a spirit of giving, trying to help them, but in turn getting friends that encouraged her to continue to go forward. And yes, you can do that. Yeah, of course you can get a loan. Do you know that you can make some income to help pay your bills if you keep it? So she put herself in that environment so that could help her grow. And I think this is so huge because me as well, when I first started, I didn't know anybody successful at real estate investing. I didn't know anyone. So if you're around people that none of them are successful in this and they don't really know how it works, you probably would hear them say, oh, well, that doesn't work. How are people getting houses at a discount? Nobody's selling houses at a discount. But because she was around those people that were already doing it, already successful in it, they encouraged her to keep going. They saw that she was on the right track. It's okay if you mess up as long as you don't quit. Just keep going. And they just continue to encourage her. So I don't want people to think that this is a small point. This is a huge point. You're the average of the 5 people that you hang around the most. So she decided she wanted to be around the winners. She didn't want to be around the people that weren't doing it. She wanted to be around the people that were already where she wanted to be. So I just wanted to point that out because it's so huge. And I think a lot of people think, oh, that's not that big of a deal. It is a big of a deal. It's really hard to believe in something that you've never seen before. And if you're around people that have seen it before, they're going to encourage you to keep going. So I just think that that's such a huge point that you make. I also want to ask, when you were in the trenches, right, you were making these offers, nobody's accepting them, I don't know if you know how many offers you had to make before someone said yes or at least countered. But what helped you, tell us more about that, being in the trenches, when you hadn't seen it yet, when, how did you keep going? Because some people may be like, man, this doesn't work. So how were you able to persist?
It was 2 things. First of all, failure was not an option. I had 3 kids under the age of 5. And we were gonna, it was sink or swim. So it was a situation that you had to hustle to get there. And then I would show up at these meetings, and I was able to connect with people, and they would be like, "Why don't you have a deal yet?" And I'm like, I'm working on it. They're like, and then when I got the deal, they're like, how come you haven't closed yet? And so it was so great to have that encouragement. And, I would beg these guys. And back then it was a guy's club. Real estate investing was different 12 years ago. And so they would just give so much encouragement, and I would beg them. I'm like, can I please just get involved? I'll be your free intern, I want to learn. And, they couldn't take it. It wasn't something that they could do at the time. And I just remember feeling man, how can I just get ahead? So I think a lot of people are like, I need to partner with someone. I need to do this. I need to do that. Just because it's scary, because we haven't done it yet. But if you have a circle that's encouraging you, that does the trick. You need mentorship, and that can just be through connections and finding a way to make it a win-win. Don't just try to take from someone. Try to find you can give value back.
Right. So just because I like to do these recaps after you talk, because I don't want people to miss out on these big points that you're making, because you're like breezing over them like it's not a big deal. It's a big deal. She had a very strong why. She had 3 kids that need to eat. We're not about to be on the Feed the Children commercial, okay? We need to feed these kids.
Yes.
And you were willing to do whatever it took to get there.
Yeah.
Like you put your pride aside. You said, hey, I need to learn this. I know that this can change me and my family's life. So I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get that. I think a lot of people, when they are first starting, either they may be intimidated, they lack the courage. I'm not exactly sure what it may be, but I think a lot of people don't like to look stupid. They want to seem like they know everything. And it's just not the case. We all started somewhere before. So what I'm hearing from you is that you did not care about that. You wanted to learn whatever it took. So you made that happen, which that is huge. So let's talk about getting into the portfolio buying. So what made you decide, okay, I'm going to do one house at a time, to saying, man, I'll just take a whole portfolio of houses? What changed to make you want to do that?
It wasn't even something that I put on the goal board. It happened organically. I was just calling a sign where it said 100% financing, and it was in the yard of a house I was driving by. So I called it and I was asking them, are you giving seller financing? I was very green in the business. Mm-hmm. It was a mortgage guy, and he's like, well, I know someone that's seller financing. He's a landlord, and he has like over 50 properties. So he talked to the seller, and the seller said he would seller finance me up to 10 properties. And they emailed me the spreadsheet and was like, just pick 10 that you're interested in. You'll just need to bring 10% down. And I'm thinking, like, you'll seller finance them? I mean, all I had to do was ask. Why haven't I been asking for this? Because at that point, I thought I could just do one at a time. I didn't have a big pool of money. And, I just realized people will say yes. Like, we didn't dive into my credit or my background or, anything like that. And I'm sure today, people may ask for that, and that's okay. But to give the opportunity of buying 10 at one time, they're all already rented, and I was trying to get rentals, and I was trying to get out of my W-2 job. So that one portfolio replaced my income at my full-time job. And I mean, one transaction can change your whole journey, right? So that's when I learned the power of that. I picked, what do? I picked the top 5 that had equity, and then the top 5 that had cash flow, and they were all in north side of Richmond. So most people know that, $100,000 back then type home is going for $500 now. And so, the power of the buy and hold, I just needed to hold. And so that's what I did. I'm like, wow, these are already rented. You do need to understand that when you buy them already rented, the renters may not work out. So, you gotta also think ahead. So what did I do? I bought the portfolio. I found 10% money because I didn't have it. I found that, in a loan. And then I refinanced him out. And his name is Carl. He's the seller. I refinanced him out. And then I got more because they said, Carl will seller finance up to 10 at one time. So now that I've refinanced him to the local bank, I'm able to buy more off Carl. So it's just been great learning that portfolio side and how you can, cash flow on day one. If they're paying, you're buying a business. It's more, buying 10 vacant properties, that sounds overwhelming, right? But buying 10 rentals, it's just different.
Right. So when you were buying, I guess, the properties in the beginning, like when you were making the offers and then to the portfolio, were you like actively thinking that I'm buying in the path of progression? Like, did you think, well, this house is worth $100,000 now, but I think in a couple years it'll be worth $200,000. Were you thinking like that, or are you thinking like, oh, I just want this cash flow, I can make it happen?
Yeah, no, I wasn't thinking long term at all. I'm just like, this is gonna give us cash flow. I'll be able to be, free soon. So I
Right.
was I knew at that point I got a little bit more calculated where I knew the numbers better. So I was only gonna buy 70% loan to value and under. So it wasn't just a half off, type offer
Right.
anymore. And I'm still like that today. I love and I see where some areas are going and they're all improving. But I'm going to evaluate it today's pricing. I'm going to be very consistent because that saves a lot of time and you can just, make the decision and go, Don't think about it too much. It's a numbers thing. Either it fits or it doesn't. Put your maximum offer out there. And if it doesn't work out, they may come around next month and you gave that was my maximum offer. It's just very simple. I don't need to revisit it again. The work's done.
Right. So I remember when we first met in 2018, and I just want to put a point of reference. Lori and I were both in our 30s. I know women don't tell their age, but we're telling. I remember in 2018, we met at a deal maker, sat right beside each other, friends at first sight. Hey girl, hey. And I remember you got up and you said, I'm retiring. If I remember correctly, you were retiring from your job and everyone was so excited.
Yes.
For you.
I've been waiting for that moment.
What made you jump? Because like a lot of people, they may have heavy deal flow, but they still don't want to leave their job, still nervous, want that steady source of income. What was it for you that made you jump and say, okay, I'm ready to do this full time?
Yeah. So really after that portfolio, I should have left my job then because I would have had more time to focus on real estate that was paying a lot more than my W-2 job. So, but I was scared. I was scared to leave. So even after that portfolio, I stayed at my job for 3 years after that. That's 3 whole years. I would be so much farther if I had just done it scared, right? That's how I got in this business, doing it scared. Just do it anyway, right? Do it movement.
Right.
So I really...
Right, that's right.
I mean, that's what it is. So if I had left, it took me 3 whole years. And those 3 years, I had people around me asking, so when are you going to leave your job? Encouraging me because it is scary. You're like, well,
right.
I'm not going to have, insurance. I got to figure out insurance. And you roadblock yourself. It's so interesting how everything goes back to mindset. So once I realized that, I am safe right now, I can leave my job. What am I doing? So it took some time for me, but I'm free. I had a retirement party.
Right. Love it.
It was
love it.
Yes, I got a cake and everything. So it was a good transition. And then I had that full 40 hours to focus, focus on real estate, my family, make those soccer practices, make those events that, you're running and, our time, it's not like we can buy more time, use that freedom for what you want to use your time,
Right.
and where your focus goes, the energy flows. So
that's right.
Yes. Getting deep with it, but it's real.
So I want to ask you, just so people can see, especially if you're newer, just starting out, maybe you've been in the game for a while, you aren't holding properties, everything that you do is active. You don't have that passive. I want you to share how real estate investing, and you can say buying, holding, or whichever part that you want to focus on, how has that changed your life?
I love that. I love that. It really has. It is life-changing. When you get freedom back, it's something that, we don't believe. We believe that we're going to work until we're 65 or whatever the age now is. But you know, you really have to retrain yourself and believe. And when you surround yourself with the right people, like Martine said, it makes it a lot easier. So that's, you know, why I'm so excited to be a co-host with you, because I so believe in your message. I believe in doing it and encouraging and inspire. That's the greatest thing that we can give back, is inspiration. So I'm just grateful to be able to share and learn with you.
Okay, that's awesome. So give the people a resource, a book maybe, or something that was a game changer for you. Laugh at the book, because if you guys know Lori says she doesn't read.
I don't, because I have no time to read. So it's such a, you know, I've listened to books, so on audio, but you know, now today I have 5 kids and a business. And so, you know, the last thing that I think about is, you know, taking a moment, which, you know, I need to change that. But Martine knows I don't read. So, but I can read, just for those who want to know. But yeah, so I would say, you know, my game changer, you know, is, I would say well, let me think about that. I would say the game changer was really the local groups going there, and just, you know, getting more into the network. You know, that's really all you need. You don't need to know how to do it. You just need to know people that can help you through it. So don't feel like you need to know everything. But yeah, the game changer for me was the mindset, and that came from the lunches. And for a while, me and you, Martine, we would take people out once a week, and we would sit down with them, and you know, that was a huge impact on my portfolio and building my business. So I learned a lot.
So what I'm hearing is that developing key relationships, and you started developing these relationships by going to the different real estate investor meetings in your local area. Developing these relationships really helped strengthen your mindset, because you needed to have the correct mindset in order for you to continue to push forward and in order to continue to grow. So you wanted to make sure that your circle was of influence so that you could be able to do those things. That's what I'm hearing.
I love that. You recapped that so beautifully. Yes. All of
well,
that.
I will say that you are definitely wise beyond your years, because I think a lot of people don't really realize how important that is. And some people, they might want to stay secluded. They want to just figure this out on their own. But there's no reason for the blind to be leading the blind. You could be being led by someone that is already at the goal you're at. So make sure you take advantage of those opportunities. You can, you know, get a coach. You can go to the local real estate investing meetings. You can network on different Facebook groups. But what I've noticed is that those in-person meetings are the absolute best meetings to have. So the more that you can get in front of people, in person, talking to people, trying to learn what you need to do to get to the next level or whatever your goal is, I would encourage you, and it sounds like Lori would also encourage you, to make those types of transactions happen as often as possible. Before we wrap up today, how can people contact you, Lori, if they want to, you know, find out more information, they want to connect with you? What's the best way to do that?
Yes, so I'm on all the social media sites. I know you'll share my email, so feel free to reach out if you want to deal make. I love problem solving, so if you want to talk through deals. We also work with a lot of private lenders. So if you're interested in investing in Virginia, Richmond area, and all the way down to the 757, Newport News surrounding areas, please let me know, and would love to connect and just find how we can.
I love that. So as you guys know, I am a buy and hold coach, and I have a one-on-one mentoring program. So if you feel like you really need some additional hand holding, you need someone to really lead you, baby steps, specialize it towards your situation, feel free to reach out to me. I think the best way to get in contact with me is to join my free group. I have an absolutely free group. All you do is answer 4 questions. It's a buy and hold community of like-minded individuals trying to buy and hold real estate investments. So the name of that group is The Freedom Inc. We'll have the link to that group in the show notes, but feel free to come and join the group, get to learn. We want you guys to change your life like our lives were changed from being in real estate investing, and especially buying and holding. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the people with before I close out the show?
I just appreciate you so much sharing. That is just amazing, and I'm excited for all the people that we're going to be bringing on the show and giving value.
Well, that's amazing. Until next time, Do It Movement listeners, see ya!
Thank you for tuning into our show. If you need more handholding on your rental property investor journey,